Welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundy, we got two more teams here. We're going through them all. I believe this is team, I want to say 11 and 12, or it might be 9 and 10 that we've covered so far this offseason.
I think it's 11 and 12.
Yeah, today we have, I will be covering the Anaheim Ducks, and you will be covering the New York Islanders.
The best New York team.
The best New York team, yes. Notoriously better than the reigning President's Trophy winner.
Yeah.
Because they got that good style of hockey over there. Do you care who goes first?
I really do not, but before we do, we have one bit of news within the league
correct.
before we do that, and then we'll decide that. This was a bit of news that kind of came out of nowhere. And something we don't see very often. The St. Louis Blues offer sheeting two Edmonton Oilers players in Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. So Philip Broberg's is, and they both signed. So it's now either Edmonton matches or they lose them. And so Philip Broberg, 2-year deal, 4.58 AAV. And Dylan Holloway, a 2-year deal, 2.29 AAV. So I believe, because St. Louis earlier in the day traded with Pittsburgh to get their own second-round pick back.
Yeah.
And so if St. Louis ends up acquiring both and Edmonton decides not to match, Edmonton would get a second-round pick in the 2025 draft from Philip Broberg, and then they would also get a third-round pick for Dylan Holloway. So that's not great for Edmonton if you're losing two former first-round picks, still young guys, and you're only getting a second and a third back.
Yeah, I absolutely love this from GM Armstrong over in St. Louis. This is awesome. Like I'm constantly banging the drum of GMs need to offer sheet more, and this dude went out to a team that is handcuffed for cap space and offer sheeted two good young players. There's no way that Edmonton's going to keep both, I don't think. I really
there's
think
no way
Broberg's
they match
gone.
Broberg. Broberg is 100% gone. They can't afford that, especially with, after next season, they got to re-sign Draisaitl. They got to re-sign Bouchard. So there's no way you're bringing in Philip Broberg to be a bottom pairing defenseman at that amount at the cost of hurting your negotiation process with, two of your top three players. Dylan Holloway, maybe, but again, like, they're already over the cap as is. And so, but one thing I will say is Edmonton has been actively trying to move Cody Ceci and Brett Kulak to open up that cap space. But the problem is like they're time crunched, right? You've got 7 days.
Yeah. And teams know this too.
Yeah. So teams are saying, you want us to take Kulak or Cody Ceci, you're giving us a first-round pick.
Yeah, I'm hearing that both guys are commanding a first and a third or something like that. Like it's a first and a bit more as well. Like teams are putting the squeeze on him because what are you supposed to do? Are you just going to lose Dylan Holloway instead? Like that's pretty rough. So welcome back to the league, Stan Bowman. Have fun dealing with that when you probably thought you were going to have the summer off.
Yeah, and here's the worst part for Edmonton fans. And if St. Louis gets Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, this is the biggest blunder in a long time for Edmonton. And a team that's been doing a lot of things right. Looking back at it, it's like, man, they might have really fucked themselves. And so back when we were talking prior to the trade deadline, we were talking about Pavel Buchnevich. And one of the teams I predicted him going, the two teams I predicted him potentially going to was either Vegas or Edmonton. And there was pretty intensive talks between St. Louis and Edmonton to send Buchnevich there. And kind of the two big pieces St. Louis was asking in that deal was Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. And Edmonton said, no, we're not trading
Yeah.
those two guys away. And now St. Louis might get both of them instead for a second and a third. And they've already re-signed Buchnevich to pretty good deal as well for what he brings. So that it's looking rough for Edmonton. And to kind of break it down as to how rare this is, there have only been 10 offer sheets in the salary cap era. These two now make it 11 and 12.
And that's just like in NHL history, right? Because I assume before the salary
Yeah.
cap era, there weren't offer sheets. So
Yeah.
we've literally seen 10 ever in the NHL. Armstrong just did 2 at once to the same team for 11 and 12. What a balls on the table move. I love this move so much. Like, that's so good.
Yeah. And I've got the ones brought up here. And there's a lot of big names that were offer sheeted. In 2006, Ryan Kessler, member with Vancouver, is offer sheeted by the Flyers. It was a 1-year deal, 1.9 AV. Vancouver matched that. Thomas Vanek in 2007, as a member of the Buffalo Sabres, was offer sheeted by the Edmonton Oilers, a 7-year deal at 7.14 AAV. That was obviously matched by Buffalo. Also in 2007, these two happened on the exact same day, with the Vanek one. Dustin Penner, 5-year deal, 5.3 AV, again, offer sheeted by the Edmonton Oilers. So Edmonton went out and offer sheeted both Thomas Vanek and Dustin Penner. And as we know, Anaheim obviously decided not to match that offer. So Edmonton did get Dustin Penner out of it. 2008, David Backes with St. Louis was offer sheeted by Vancouver. 3 years, 2.5 AV. Obviously, St. Louis was going to match that. 2000, and then so this is another one where you're kind of seeing because when we talk about offer sheets, we'll get to the very big one, but then we talk about the Carolina Montreal thing. So this was St. Louis's way of kind of getting back at Vancouver. St. Louis offer sheeted Steve Bernier, 1-year deal, 2.5 AV. Vancouver matched that. 2010, Nicholas Hjalmarsson was offer sheeted by San Jose, 4 years, 3.5 AV. That was matched by Chicago. This is the big one. 2012, Shea Weber, member of the Nashville Predators, was offer sheeted by the Philadelphia Flyers. 14 years, 7.86 AAV. And as we know, obviously Nashville ended up matching that. They probably weren't thrilled to match that and have to give Shea Weber 14 years, but they did it.
That's so funny.
That one is still just absurd.
Offer sheeting somebody with a 14-year deal.
Yeah. 2013, Ryan O'Reilly is a member of the Colorado Avalanche, was offer sheeted by the Calgary Flames. 2 years, 5 mil AAV. Colorado obviously matched that. And then the last two, the ones kind of similar to the little rivalry we talked about with St. Louis and Vancouver. 2019, Montreal offer sheeted Sebastian Aho. 5 years, 8.45 AAV. Carolina obviously matches that. And then 2 years later in 2021, Carolina offer sheets Jesperi Kotkaniemi, 1 year, 6.1 AAV, and Montreal decided to not match that offer. So there's more often than not, when a guy gets offer sheeted, their team just signs it and retains them. But there is a couple instances where, teams aren't willing to do that based on the contracts that the guys sign. And I think, I don't know about Dylan Holloway, but I'd be shocked if Philip Broberg is back with Edmonton.
Yeah.
I think there's only 2 days left or something now.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 days ago at this point at the time of recording here. And yeah, I've been looking around and I've seen Edmonton fans saying they hope they can keep Holloway. Most of them have already written off Broberg. At 4.58, that's just not something they can afford right now.
You just can. You just can.
And smartly by St. Louis, both of these are 2-year deals, which means both of them have to be accounted for with Draisaitl's extension if Edmonton wants to
and
keep.
Bouchard's as well.
Yeah.
Like
So
they played it smart.
So I think those both being 2 years is them attempting to get both guys, and
Yeah.
I think it could definitely work. I think it will work with Broberg, and it might with Holloway. Do you know? Because obviously this could put them over the cap, but does that matter right now? Because we're in the off season. Do they need to be under the cap right now, or is it like by
No, but like
preseason?
you bring in Holloway, all the guys you've got, you're gonna be over.
Yeah.
Like, and I know there's talks of like, Evander Kane probably does start the season on
LTIR.
IR potentially. Yeah, so his cap. But like again, it's Evander Kane's not sitting out the entirety of, like, he's not just sitting there on LTIR and never playing again.
Yeah. But
right.
that
So
could
like you're gonna
be
have to
kicking
bring
the
him
can
back in
down the road.
eventually.
But
that's the thing. If you're gonna make a move to get out a guy like Ceci or Kulak, you're doing it now. Like
yeah,
because they're no one's gonna take him down the road, because again, then you're still running into that situation of a team's still gonna be like, hey, you know what? Sure, you managed to keep Holloway, but guess what? You're still over the cap. You want to move him? All right, fuck you. Now it's a first and a second.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you didn't want to take our deal back then, and now you want us to do it? Like, no, now we're going to increase the offer, and now Edmonton would probably have to overpay to move a guy. So again, I completely agree with you. I think Broberg is for sure gone. I do not see him back in Edmonton. Holloway, I think a 50-50.
Yeah, really. I think it mostly
that one's
depends
up
if a
in the
team
air.
helps them. If a team will take one of those guys at Kulak or Ceci and pretty much if they can make the room, because otherwise it's a pretty tough sell, and then they're put in a spot where they're over the cap. They'd have zero leverage with anybody.
Yeah. And I love this. I love seeing these offer sheets. I love seeing the drama it creates and whatnot.
So
like, and I see people being like, "Why would they do that? Like, if you want them, try and make a trade for him or something. Like, don't." And it's like, why? It's well within the rules, and like
for a second and a third. That's a
great.
Imagine it as that's the trade, but you're forcing the other team to make the decision. That's a great trade.
Yeah, like if you're a person that complains about offer sheets, you're a complete loser. Like.
You
Straight up,
fun.
you hate fun. You don't get invited to parties. You get no bitches. Like you're like that's straight up. No, that's straight up. Like if you don't like offer sheets,
well,
that's it.
I think you need to put a caveat on it. You have to put a caveat on that. If you don't like when other players are offer sheeted, players that aren't on your team are offer sheeted, then you don't like fun. I've never had it happen as a Tampa fan. But I can imagine being salty at the system if a guy you really like gets offer sheeted.
But that's the thing, right? You don't sit there and be like, "Oh, fuck St. Louis." You sit there and be like, and you're pissed off at your own GM, your own management for being like, you let it get to this point. You let these two guys dangle there and were available to anyone. But again, they're doing their job. They're doing what's best for them, and at the end, you can't fault them for that.
Well, yeah, and Nick Cousins is doing his best to try and win a hockey game. That doesn't mean I can't despise him.
Hey, Stanley Cup champion Nick Cousins.
Yeah,
exactly. Notable free agent Nick Cousins.
Yeah. Brad Marchand's just trying to get under your skin and win the game, but that doesn't mean I can't hate him for it.
Well, he's also.
I'm not saying it's rational. I'm saying it's just that's what it's like.
Yeah, if you're an outside perspective on this, and
Buffalo
you're complaining,
fans hate this, then like it's like what?
I think Buffalo fans got bigger worries right now. But
no, they're gonna go crazy next year.
Anyways, we will obviously beginning of next week when we come back to this. I'm pretty sure by that point we will have full clarity on what the situation is with this. Again, I think we're kind of on the same page. I think Broberg is for sure going to St. Louis. Holloway, I think, is a 50-50. I could see a world where Edmonton has to move out some to keep him, or Edmonton just they match Holloway's to keep him, and then they're like, yeah, we're going to kick that can down the road. But if you're Edmonton at this point now, unless you're just losing both guys, you're going to have to make a trade, and unfortunately, you're going to get fleeced in it. Like, it's going to be a bad trade for you, but that's the price you got to pay. Yeah.
One other thing, we don't really have to talk about this for very long, but it's worth mentioning. Ryan Getzlaf has joined the NHL Department of Player Safety. Uh, Ryan Getzlaf spent his entire career with the Anaheim Ducks, won a Stanley Cup there, was captain for a long time, uh, almost a lock for the Hall of Fame once he's eligible. And now he's going to be a part of the Department of Player Safety, and I think it's great. I just love seeing
Yeah.
past guys, especially guys with a good reputation like Getzlav, being part of not only the league but also just the Department of Player Safety, because who better than a guy who's played with like a lot of guys, and you know it helps that he's not just a goon. Like George Peros being head of it is pretty shifty, but I have no problem with
It's so
Getzlav being
bad.
there.
Well, and I think it kind of sets, I think, again, I don't know, but I think this is kind of setting up for Getzlaff to kind of take over that role that Peros is in at some point. I think they're kind of starting to, move on to the next guy now. Like, obviously, there was Shanahan, and then he went out, and Peros came in. I think within the next couple of years, I think we probably see Peros is out and Ryan Getzlaff is moved into that role,
Yeah,
which I think would be
I
great.
hope so.
I think right now there's like you could pick so many other guys who would be better than Peros, and I think Getzlaff would be a fantastic choice for this, and I think there'd be a lot more consistency from the Department of Play Safety, and I think there would also be, it would be a lot more strict. Like, when you're seeing a guy do something and gets 2 games, but then a couple nights later, another guy does the exact same thing and he's only fined for it. And it's like, well, where's the line there? Like, what are you basing this off of?
Yeah,
Like, they're just picking, and you don't really get any, description or clarification for how they did or anything. It's kind of just, they throw it out there and they say, this is it. And enjoy the shit show that we continue to produce. So
yeah, yeah. Like it's really just a mess with George Peros being in charge, and uh, the sooner he's out of the picture, the better, really. And I think Getzlaff would
100%.
be a great replacement. Just going to throw this out there. George Peros played 474 games in the NHL. Not few, not a ton. 36 points. He was not out there to score. 19 playoff games, 0 points. 1,092 penalty minutes. He literally went out there and was just a bully on skates, and people paid him for it. And some reason they think he's the best guy to judge what's safe.
Yeah, he's not cut out for the role. We've known that for a long time. So hopefully this is the start of the end of the George Peros era. But
I hope so. There's
never know.
definitely a couple worse guys that could be in charge, but the odds are whoever's next will be better, especially if it's Getzlaff.
That's kind of where I'm at, right? Like, there's a few guys that probably would be worse, but I think whoever comes in next is going to be much better than what Peros is doing right now.
Yeah. Speaking of Ryan Getzlaff, the Anaheim Ducks. We got the
Cucks of Anaheim.
Ducks, the mighty Cucks of Anaheim. They have some of the most cap space left still in the league at 21.7 million in cap space. So they can still soak up dead contracts later on. They can make trades to give room to other teams down the road this season. They could sign guys. Like they've got a lot of wiggle room, which is really nice for them. As far as draft picks go, not a ton of movement. They don't have this upcoming year's second or 2026 fourth, but they have an extra third, fourth, and fifth this upcoming year. So they're missing a few pieces. They have a couple extras. Not much to talk about there. But this team, obviously, everything rides on their young guys. They are in a rebuild. They are maybe not. They're going to want to come out of the rebuild soon. maybe not as soon as this season, but they want to see all these guys start taking steps this season so that next year they can fully start coming out of it. I don't
Yeah.
think next year they make the playoffs, but I think they're fighting for a playoff spot at
No,
that point.
they're
I
not
think,
fighting for no. They're going to improve. I think they're going to be in that range when we come around to the draft next year. They're probably in like I would say the 8, 9, 10 range. Like they're not going to have
sorry, I
they're
was
not going to have
talking,
yet another top 3 pick.
yeah, I'm
But I
talking
don't see
about
them
in
yeah.
2 seasons, like not this
Oh,
year,
okay.
but the
Okay, I
next
got
year.
you.
The
I was going to say this upcoming year, no fucking shot they're fighting for a playoff spot
yeah,
when it's
no,
getting down to near the end of the
no,
season.
they're hoping this year to build to that
Yeah.
in 2 seasons.
Yeah, this year is more of a development year. It's helping
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they're a young team, a lot of young talent. It's about helping those guys take that next step. So come next year, they're that much better because like they have their core that they're running with. It's now okay. Now you guys got to start developing them and allowing them to win and be more confident because it's hard to develop as a player when you're getting shit pumped every night and you're constantly losing and you're known as being a loser out there. You're not winning games. It's tough for young players coming into the league at such a young age to develop and hit that next level in their game when you know they just want to win. They just want to actually win a game for once. And so
Yeah, yeah,
so it's a
absolutely.
development year.
It's 100% development year. They care about individual player stats. They care about individual player progress, not the team stats. Um, but that being said, this past season, the team stats for the Ducks: 27 wins, 50 losses, and 5 overtime losses for 59 points on the season. I thought they were a bit higher than San Jose than they actually were. They only beat San Jose by 12 points. I kind of thought they were closer to 20 some points above them. They didn't clear them by a ton, uh,
Yeah, no.
considering where they're at. So, uh,
What'd you say their point total was?
59 points. The Sharks had 47.
Okay, so Anaheim goes for and against. They were 30th out of 32 for both. So not great. And then they're going into the season over under on point totals was 68.5. So obviously they were well below that. So if you hit the under,
Done.
congrats, you did the same thing as probably 99% of other people. And if you're the one part of the 1% that did the over, you got some balls. So I respect that.
Um, yeah, but they did not play well last year, but they had some guys take some good steps. They had quite a few guys not play full seasons. A lot of them are very young, so I'm not 100% sure if it was not playing the full season because of injury or because they just weren't in the NHL for all 82. But uh, a lot of them put up really good numbers. Troy Terry put up 54 points and 20 goals, and he played almost all the games, 76. McTavish took a nice step, 19 goals, 42 points, and 64. Frank Vetrano led their team in scoring, all 82 games, 37 goals, 60 points.
Like
I
17 more than the next highest.
Yeah, that's like we've talked about a couple teams already in these reviews where we've had like we've had like 8 or 9 or 10 guys on a team hitting 20 goals. They had 2 guys hit 20 goals,
Yeah.
and one of them hit exactly 20. Like they didn't do a lot of scoring last year. There's a lot of minuses on this list, but
Yeah.
that's just to be expected with where the team's at. The main guys, obviously, that they want to take that next step this upcoming year. I assume they want Troy Terry to get a bit better as well, but the main ones obviously are Trevor Zegras, Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish. Cutter Gauthier is probably playing in the show next year. Pavel Mintyukov, even maybe Olin Zellweger, if he gets in. Like,
I expect Zellweger to he should be on the team come next year.
yeah,
I'd be
and then
shocked if he isn't.
they also have Beckett Seneca, who they picked. Uh, was it third overall this year?
Yeah.
He I don't know if he plays. I figure
No,
probably
no,
not, but they did
no.
sign him to his ELC.
If he does, it would be one of those things where he starts out the season with the Ducks and he plays his 8 or 9 games and then gets sent back down. Because remember, he's still also growing,
Yeah,
and there is a lot of like he was the riser of the draft, right? He was
yeah.
the guy that was supposed to be a
A
late first,
12th.
early second round pick at the start of the season. Then he kind of moved up into the 20 range. So I was like, okay, he's probably you know now he's going to be in that probably 10 to 12 range going into the draft. So like he moved up quite a bit. But then there was rumors like he could go like as easily as third overall to the Ducks, and sure enough, that's what happened. So when you've got a guy that is such a riser like that, I think you need to send him back and just give him another year of development, continue to get a little bit bigger,
Yeah,
and he can dominate in that league at that point. Like he can be one of the top guys in the league. He can just be working on all areas of his game. He can be out there just maxing out his confidence and just continuing to increase his skill. And so then when, next year when, like you said, they're ready to compete, you know, McTavish is going to have another year under his belt. Carlson's a new Zellweger, like all their young guys. And then it's easier to integrate Seneca in there as opposed to being like, putting him in there now, but you don't, you're putting him in there with a bunch of other young guys already who are in the exact same position as him.
yeah,
Whereas at least with him, you can prolong it one more year, and then it'll help make his adjustment into the NHL a little bit easier for him.
yeah, yeah. I definitely think they should, and I do think they will. Anaheim doesn't seem like a team that rushes their guys too quick, which is funny to say because a lot of their guys did make the jump very young that are currently on the roster, but they're
Yeah.
also guys that kind of were undeniable as soon as they played some NHL games. Like, McTavish, Carlson, and Zegras. As soon as they got a taste of the NHL, it was hard to look at the rest of your roster and go, yeah, they can't be here. Like,
Yeah.
at any of them at worst, it was like, okay, they'll be a third line scoring guy for now. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the only one I really know for sure that was injured last year was Trevor Zegras, who had a lot of people say he had a really bad year, and I mean maybe they're just talking about the lack of games played, but 31 games played, he still had 6 goals for 15 points, so he was half a point per game.
Yeah.
He,
You need more from Zegras, though, than half a point.
but people talk about him as if he's like a bust or something. Dude's
No,
22.
he's definitely not a bust. Like that
Like,
again, we've already had that conversation. People throw
yeah,
the word bust out there
yeah.
just
But like
for free.
he's 22 years old. He surely wasn't playing with that quality of teammates either. They're all trying to get better. Yeah, I really think that Zegras is going to bounce back. I think a lot of people are pretty low on him.
I, th- I,
Relatively
I don't
to how
know.
high they were 1 or 2 years ago.
He's in a weird spot because like I'm not throwing the word bust around, but I'm still on the train of it. I think Zegras is overrated for what people, claim for him and whatnot. But and it's maybe a
See,
bit
a
of a
lot of
down
people
year.
say that,
There's
but
a lot
I
of
don't.
injuries, but I still think, you know, I still think I'm on the side of he's more overrated in rather than, being, people are underestimating, they're valuing him too low.
I honestly think he's underrated at this point because I'm seeing everybody say that he's overrated, and I'm trying to figure out who's rating him high. Like, it's literally just the NHL putting him in clips and highlights and on the cover of the game. People are looking at him going, he's
Not
overrated.
no,
Nobody's
I don't
say
look at that. I
nobody's
go up
saying he's a
like,
good player. Like hardly anybody's saying he's elite.
oh, lots of
And
people say he's a
I'm looking
great
at him
player.
going, this is a guy who's freaking elite. He is a
I wouldn't
top
say
line
elite.
forward. Like,
Nah, come on, come on.
well, obviously not
Just because
right
you
now,
hit
but
one mish or a
he's
couple
going to
mishes,
become
like
an elite player. Leo Carlson is not yet elite. We know
he
he's going to
he
get there.
could. I'm not going to sit here and again, I think he's a good player, but I'm not going to sit here and be like he's going to be a top line guy. He's going to be elite. He very well could end up just being a very solid second liner who can, also thrive on the power play. Right? Like he hasn't aside from, the flip pass and the lacrosse goal, which I mean, like the mishes are sick. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't done anything to make me be like, yeah, he's gonna be an elite player like Mason McTavish. He's gonna be he's gonna be an elite player, a number one center, because we've seen those flashes from him and we've seen what he can do to show that okay, yeah, he's gonna be a top end guy. Zegras, I haven't seen that yet where I'm certain on that. Definitely a top six forward, but I
think
need to
he's
see
gonna be a
more
league
from him
guy.
before I can say, you know, I'm on the side of I don't throw the word elite or bust around very often. Like I think you've got to be at a certain level to be considered elite. Like you got to be, you know, high up there. And until if Zegers goes out there next year and he plays 82 games and he can be an 80-point guy, okay, then we can maybe have that conversation. But until he can do that, I I can't
I
say that I see
I'm not
a
saying he's
world where
elite
I
right
can
now. I
call him
think
elite.
he definitely will become elite. Like, I don't think anybody on this team is cracking 80 points. Maybe I think guys might knock on the door of 70. I don't even think somebody hits that on this team though next year.
I think McTavish does next year.
He only had 42 points this past year, which is good, but to jump up 30 or 40 more points, like doubling your point totals on
I
a
don't know.
bottoming out Ducks team, 21 years old, I don't see him improving that much in a single season. But you know what? I'd love to see it. Really do like a lot of these young guys that the Ducks have coming up, and they are going to be a force in a few
Okay, but
years.
okay, so here's the thing, though, right? Not last year, the year before, McTavish, 43 points in 80 games. Last year, 42 points, so 1 point less, but only in 64 games. You put him on an 80 point or 80 game pace and say he continues what he did, 52 and a half points. So it's not crazy to think, from his draft year or from like his rookie year to his sophomore year, he increased in 10 points. It's not crazy to be like, jumping into his third year and whatnot, like his contract year, he's going to be able to eligible to sign a deal next year. It's not crazy to think he can make that jump up to 70 points because, like we said, this whole Ducks team is going to be better. They're going to win more games. They're not going to be a bottom feeder, or at least shouldn't be.
They're not going to be a bottom feeder, but I think they will be healthily out of the playoffs. I think
Oh, and I'm
they'll
right there
probably be
with you.
mathematically eliminated around game 70 for them.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. But I think McTavish he's gonna take another step.
I think he's going to take
And
a step, but 60, 65 points. I might say, but up to
I'm
80,
calling
I
it
think
right
would be
now.
crazy.
I'm not saying 80. I'm saying 70. I'm saying
Oh,
he's
okay.
he's gonna hit it. He's gonna hit 70 at least.
Hey, you know what? We'd love to see it.
80. I don't know about that. That might be a bit much from him already. Considering again, not the best talent right now. Still a young team and a lot of learning to be done. But I think 70 is he at least gets there.
Yeah, well, you know what? Hopefully, we can remember that, and we'll see what happens by the end of the season. Because it's so hard to tell with some of these young guys. He could take a step back. He could break out for 90 points and be insane. Like we've seen some guys just randomly explode for offense. And who knows? Maybe you get two guys on that team doing it. Like, it's not crazy to think Leo Carlson. Like they have so many talented young guys. It's not crazy to think that Cutter Gauthier shows up and immediately puts up 60 points, and Carlson goes off and McTavish goes off. Like they could be outside
Mm-hmm.
the playoffs and have an insane power play if these guys have good chemistry and get creative.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we'll take a look at their line projections. These are the daily face-off line combinations. This is with updated rosters, but not any leaked lines or anything like that. So this is just what they assume the lineups are going to be. We don't know if these will be the official lines, but for what they have written down, for their first forward line, they've got Alex Killorn on the left wing, Troy Terry on the right wing, centered by Leo Carlson. Obviously, that you don't want, you're not winning cups with that as your first line, but you could do a lot worse as a rebuilding team. And you know what? Leo
I
Carlson's
think so.
Leo Carlsson's going to be a really good playmaker in this league. And, Troy Terry, one of their 20-goal guys last year, 54 points. And Alex Killorn, who's a veteran, a cup winner. He's great at catching passes and just burying them. Like he's just played with guys like Stamkos and Hedman his whole career, and he's just always able to corral a puck and put it in the net. So I think that's a great
Zach
kind of
Hyman,
veteran presence. Yeah,
some would say.
It's a great veteran presence to help a young guy find his game.
Mm. Yeah, I don't love that first line. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect for, again, a team where you're gonna miss the playoffs, but it's a decent top line.
I think Killorn is the perfect guy to put beside Terry and Carlsson on that top line right now, but also he's the perfect guy that he can be surpassed. If Cutter Gauthier shows up and is lights out, or one of their other guys moves to the wing and is really proven himself, Killorn could get knocked down, and that guy could take that spot on that top line. Like Killorn is not immovable from that spot, and I think that's what makes him a great fit for that top six. Like if Gauthier or Zegras might be moving to the wing if they really want to do that, because they already got Carlsson and McTavish, that could be a real nice spot for him to move around partway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For the second line, they got Cutter Gauthier on the left wing, Frank Vetrano on the right wing, and Trevor Zegras centering them. That's pretty nice for as a rebuilding team for your second line. Like that's two pretty skilled guys next to Frank Vetrano, who, again, 37 goals, 60 points last year, put up really solid numbers. Like he's going to help boost their numbers, get them a lot of confidence, and yeah, I think he's going to make Cutter Gauthier look like a stud.
Yeah, again, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I still think going into next year, they're going to find a way to get Mason McTavish into that top six. I don't know how you go about it and who comes out of there, but I don't see a world in which he's not in their top six. So, but again, with not having him in the top six, just going off what they've got right here, I don't love it. I don't hate it. Again, it's perfect for where they're at now and the direction they're going in. Because the goal for them is obviously it's not to win the Stanley Cup, and it's not to be the worst team in the league and get the first overall pick. Like it's about having your guys improving overall as a team, and taking that next step in hopes that by the next 2 to 3 years you're fighting for a wild card spot. You're fighting to be back in the playoffs. So this is right where they need to be, and if these are the top two lines, that's just fine for them.
Do you know where Sam Carrick is? Is he still playing with them?
No, he's I think he's just a free agent right now.
Okay.
Because he was with Edmonton, but I don't think he signed anywhere.
Okay.
Oh, he did. He went to the Rangers.
I'm looking at their lineup, and they've got a lot of straight up, very similar to I believe Buffalo when we were talking about them. A lot of really bad face-off numbers, except for a couple exceptions who very clearly took way more face-offs than everybody else because they were good at it. And those three guys these are the only three guys that are higher than like a 47% in the dot. And that's Sam Carrick, who they don't have anymore, Adam Henrique, who they don't have anymore, and Mason McTavish, who was a 52% with over 800 face-offs taken.
Dude, so I'm telling you, he's sick. I'm telling you,
probably want McTavish in that top, not only in that top six, but he's got to be the centerman, or at least taking the draws.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing, right? I think they're set up in that aspect of like you've got your 1-2 punch in the middle. Like that's what you're looking at all of these rebuilding teams. Like that's what every single one of them is trying to create. You look at a bunch of recent, Stanley Cup champions. You have that kind of 1-2 punch for the most part. Not every team, but for the most part.
The majority of them have that, that Point Stamkos, that McKinnon Kadri, that, that Malkin Crosby. Like
that Matthews Tavares.
maybe not at that price point, but
But even the McDavid Draisaitl,
yeah,
right? The Pedersen Miller,
yeah,
like
it's how you build a very strong team at this point. It really feels like teams, often used to build from the net outwards, kind of. A lot of teams start with those two good, strong centermen, and
well, and that's a
and
thing,
this
right?
makes it kind of awkward spot for Zegras because Carlson's kind of undeniable, and McTavish is
So no, here's the thing though.
you can't really usurp him right
Your
now in
your
the
one
dot.
your 1-2 center has to be McTavish and Carlson going forward because not only like McTavish and like both of them have the capabilities of being uh, a consistent 80 plus point guy um, every year, but the fact but they're also good defensively. And so when you've got kind of like two, I don't think either of them are going to win a Selkie, but like a really good defensive forward that can put up numbers.
I think
That's what you want in
Carlson might.
Zegras, he's better as a winger. You watch Zegras,
His play
when you
style
talk about
is,
Zegras,
yeah,
you only talk about his offensive capabilities. You're not talking about the stuff he does in the defensive because that's not his game. He is not a in the middle grinding in faceoffs, forecheck, back check, being the first guy back and whatnot. He's better on the wing and just being out there to create offense,
yeah,
pull off some sick mishies and score goals and whatnot. That's his game. It's not in the middle trying to be a two-way guy. Because again, you look at a lot of these teams, you kind of need having centermen that get points, but you need guys that are also responsible defensively if they're going to log, 18 plus minutes a night.
yeah.
You need responsible defensive players, and Zegras
Or
doesn't need to be that
you
as
need
much if
to,
he's on the wing.
yeah, and there are some cases where there's some pretty bad defensively forwards that are in that top two center positions, but generally the team goes out of their way to pick up a really good defensively winger. They'll go pick up a Mark Stone or a Mitch Marner or somebody who can play good defense on the wing beside them
Yeah.
to kind of cover that up a little bit. So,
And plus, if you're kind of looking for the future, by the time they're trying to contend and compete for the playoffs, Killorn and Vetrano probably aren't there anymore. So
no.
if you're rolling like your top line is, Cutter Gauthier, Leo Carlson, Troy Terry, and then your second line is Zegras and Beckett Seneca on the wing with McTavish in the middle.
That's
That's
great.
actually that's good. If those guys all hit, you know, their capabilities,
That's a
that
cup
or
winning
what's
core.
expected from them, like that,
Like
and
that's
that's a
great.
young core too. That's a very young core too. Like you're talking Troy Terry's the oldest, and by that point he's going to
Yeah,
be 28, 29, I think,
yeah,
30 maybe.
yeah.
But still, like
He's 26 right now. And then who's the second oldest guy that you listed there? Trevor Zegras at
it'd be
23
Zegers.
right now.
So he'll be
Like
like 25, 26.
they're so crazy young. And this top six that we're talking about is the main reason why I really think that they should have moved Frank Vetrano at some point already, or even last season.
They
You
should
just
have,
put
yeah.
like I think you just gotta be like, Zegras, I know you want to be centerman. We got our centerman. You want to
Yeah.
be on the top six? I'm sorry, you gotta play on the wing. You just gotta do it. Now go
Like
score
you
a cool
have to.
goal.
Yeah.
And
You can't
shove
put
him over on the
McTavish
right
or
side,
Carlson on the
move
wing.
McTavish up, and Vetrano just had I'm gonna say it again: 37 goals, 60 points. On that Ducks team, the next closest guy was 20 goals.
I
Like,
think it was something like
you got to be able to get a great return from that. Some teams got to be willing to do it. Like, how much
I
money
think
is
it ended
Vetrano
up
even making?
being I think I saw a stat. I think it ended up being out of all fantasy hockey league teams, at least this was just on Yahoo. I think it was 62 or 64% of teams that won uh, their league championship had Frank Vetrano on their team because no one's
Did
drafting
I
him
win
in
last
the
year? I won last
yeah
year, right? I think I had
yeah
him.
yeah
At
yeah
least
whatever.
at some point I did.
I, I can't remember, but
Yeah.
that just goes to show like he's a guy that he's not getting drafted in any fantasy leagues, but then people are picking him up because he's scoring well, and then like you said, 37 goals. Like he just absolutely exploded last year and was again we said it 17 more goals than the next highest on the team.
Yeah. And
But
he's making
like
3.65 mil Of course, last year it was for 2 years. Now it's 1 year left. But if you retain 50% on that, that's like 1.825 mil per year. Getting a 37 goal, 60-point guy for that cheap at the deadline, like I would launch my first round pick and something into a cannon and fire it at Anaheim. Like it'd be great for Anaheim, but like it's also a great move for a team looking to really make that next step in the playoffs. Like that's that's just such good scoring depth from
Yeah.
Frank Vetrano. So I would be shocked if he finished the season there because
Well, and we
they got to
talked
make
about
room
it
in the
how
lineup, and he's a hot commodity. Like
yeah,
I
like
think they
we talked about
yeah
with Anaheim, like you mentioned how you're surprised actually how closer they were to like San Jose and Chicago at the bottom there. Like Frank Vetrano had 37 goals. Um, Chicago, they only had two guys above 20, and that was Bedard and Dickinson. Both had 22 goals. San Jose, they only had one guy above 20 goals, and that was Zetterlund, 24. So like being a bottom three team and kind of being more so down with, you know, San Jose and Chicago, like the fact that he had 37, he like outscored like crazy compared to what the other teams were doing.
yeah
They
he had
should
a
have moved
monster
him. I
year.
agree with you.
They they either got to move him before the season starts or they got to really hope that he replicates last year so that they can move him
Yeah,
because yeah, you could get a lot back for him, and you just need that last spot in the top six. Maybe not as
you
soon as
do.
this year. Maybe maybe Cutter Gauthier is not really ready for top six, but I kind of feel like he is. Uh, if he's not, you could argue him on the third line, and you'd still have to move Zegras over to bring McTavish up. But
Yeah,
yeah, they got to make that room sooner rather than later, I think.
yeah.
Speaking of, though, what they have projected on Daily Faceoff for the third line, Robbie Fabry on the left wing, Ryan Strome on the right wing, centered by Mason McTavish. I
I mean, if
mean,
that's what they roll out, that's fine. Like if,
I was
if
gonna say,
McTavish actually is on the third line, like that's gross.
you like to have him in the top six, but that's a pretty nice third line, honestly. So,
Yeah,
and then you got the fourth line, Brock McGinn and Brett Leeson, centered by Isaac Lundestrom.
it's a fine fourth line
That's fine.
actually.
That's
That's a
really not
good kind of
that bad.
more defensive fourth line, crash and bash hit. Like it's a
Honestly,
fun fourth line. I actually kind of dig that.
yeah, and that's all they need right now. At a rebuilding team, last thing you want to do is worry about your fourth line. You know what? Put some
Yeah.
responsible enough guys out there, and just don't lose us the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. And those are guys that can play some penalty kill minutes and block shots and like that's what you want out of a fourth line.
Yeah,
They're not out there to score goals. They're out there to just play solid, two-way hockey and then and that's their job. And if they get the occasional goals, even better.
yeah, absolutely. And we'll move on to the defensive core from here. Obviously, the majority of talked about the Ducks is that the guys that they had slot in that top six and McTavish. But they got a couple young, really good players on this defensive core as well now. The first pairing being Olin Zellweger and Cam Fowler. That's not too
I like
bad.
it. I
Uh,
think Cam Fowler's the perfect guy to put with Zellweger to help his development coming into the league. I think
yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Are you at all surprised that Zellweger's on that first defensive pair?
Well, but again, that's the thing, right? Is like I think Cam Fowler is the best guy to put him with, and Cam Fowler is their top guy, and Zellweger has the potential to be able, to log that first pairing minutes, especially with his offensive capabilities. So, like, I see it. It makes sense to me.
I just kind of thought that spot would be earmarked for Pavel Mintyukov.
But the thing is, right, is Zellweger's ceiling is so much higher.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
Mintyukov is gonna have the better defensive game, but like
Zellweger's
again,
going to be
we
their
need
power play guy kind of thing.
yeah, like he has the potential. Again, I don't know if he's going to hit it. I haven't seen enough of him in the league yet to know for sure. But he could be a consistent, 65 plus point guy on the blue line, potentially even reaching, 75 maybe.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
he's
fair
going to be
enough.
a great offensive defenseman for them, and if they can get him clicking with the guys they got up front, like that's even better.
And then on the second pair, they have the aforementioned Pavel Mintyukov playing with Radko Gudas.
Your boy Gudas,
My boy
your
Radko
favorite
Gudas.
player in the league.
First NHL jersey I ever got was a custom made, because of course they weren't selling them at the store, Radko Gudas Lightning jersey.
Dude, that's just it's sick. That was sick that you got
It's
Gudas on
so
it.
funny every time I wear my Gudas jersey to a game. Like
Hey, do you remember
I'll
the
have
first
some.
arena? You wore the Gudas jersey too?
Was it the Ducks arena or was it
Yeah,
the
Honda
Dubs?
Center.
It was the
Team we're
Honda
talking about
Center.
right now, Honda Center, yeah. Because we went down not long after we got him. And that was the
Yeah, I
first time
guess
you
we
got
would.
to
Yeah, I
actually
guess we would have.
bust
Yeah,
it out. You're walking around Honda Center for a Sharks Ducks game with a
Sharks Ducks
fucking
game with a Gudas
Radko
jersey.
Gudas jersey of all ones. Hey,
Oh,
but
I
look
should
at
have been on the Lost
it's
Fans cam.
it's come full circle. He's with the Ducks now, and that's a fun.
Truth
I
for
like that
told.
for a second pair. I
Yeah,
think
it's pretty good.
that's good having that like those two together. I think that's the way I would put their top four.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid. Yeah,
Because I
I
think
always.
Zellweger probably does top power play unit. Fowler does, second, but then your top, I think your two guys that are jumping over when it's penalty kill time is going to be Mintakov and Gudas. So, like it, whatever way you slice it, with who's on the first defensive pairing second, they have their jobs and they're completely different jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on that third defensive pairing, they have Brian Dumoulin and Jackson Lacombe.
Again, like we talked about with the fourth line, it's fine. I think it's actually a bit above average more because you've got Brian Dumoulin, who, again, in what he does and be a defenseman, I really like his game for that. So, yeah.
I really don't know much about Jackson Lacombe.
Yeah,
17
I
points
literally
last
have no
year in
idea who he is.
71 games.
Okay, so you know what? That's
19 and a half minutes time on ice. He was probably on their second D pair last year, actually.
probably was, yeah, because Zellweger wasn't there, Dumoulin wasn't. So, yeah, he probably was actually.
Yeah, minus 24, but at the same time, you're
Played
playing
on the Ducks.
19 and a half minutes of ice time playing for the Ducks last year. Minus 24
How old is
really
he?
doesn't seem that bad. 23 years old.
Okay, so still a young guy. Put him with Dumoulin. Yep. Is he a righty?
Do they have that on here? I think it listed him as a right/left winger, or a defenseman. Like it had him as both. Shoots left.
Oh, okay. I just like that top pair a little bit more then, because if that's, again, I'm a, whether you want to believe it or not that it matters. I'm big on the fact of trying to have 3 left-handed defensemen, 3 right-handed defensemen on your blue line. If that is what the Ducks rolling out, that's 5 lefties and only 1 righty. Which I'm not.
Yep.
I'm not
like
crazy
is
about
the only
that.
right shot.
Like even if you swapped out 1 and you had 4 and 2, okay, sure, but like 5 and 1, because that's 2 guys you have to put on their offside, their offhand that they're not used to playing on that side.
Yeah. Yeah,
so I don't love that, but
I like that they have Cam Fowler taking that and just dealing with it rather than one of the young guys, But yeah, it's still weird. Trying to make it work on the bottom pair is, I get it, but at the same time, you can't fully forget about that. Your third defensive pair still plays decent minutes, so
yeah.
And then I guess all there's left to talk about is the goalies, which of course is John Gibson and
their
Lucas
7th
Dostal.
Their 7th defenseman, Vakanainen, and he's a lefty too. Fuck, get some righties on the blue line.
Didn't they just trade a right-handed defenseman?
Bro, I don't know who they moved.
For Cutter Gauthier. They moved
Drysdale. Yeah.
He was a right-handed.
Yeah, he actually was. Yeah.
Not that was a bad trade by any stretch for them, but
yeah. Yeah, that was their young righty stud defenseman, yeah. And for the goalies, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
Like
John
Dostal's
Gibson,
a good up and comer.
good, not the
Gibson,
what he was, but he's still good.
yeah. Best case scenario is you get some better development from Dostal, and the team is better as a whole. Gibson puts up better numbers, and maybe you can finally try and move him so Dostal can now be your guy for the future.
Yeah, Dostal
In an
on
ideal world, that
yeah.
is.
Last year was obviously pretty bad for the Ducks. A 902 save percentage from a 23-year-old Lucas Dostal. Uh, that's that's pretty good. He might turn into something real nice for them.
I
Honestly,
think they could have something special with him.
like
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard his name around way longer than I should have from being 23 years old as a goalie. He also played 44 games last year to John Gibson's 46. Uh, they basically split the net because that's games played. That's not games started. So
Yeah.
yeah, they basically split the net. Like
Yeah.
I think unless Gibson reclaims it hard this year, Dostal's gonna slip right in there, and yeah, they've probably gonna want to move John Gibson sooner rather than later. But
Yeah.
at 6.4 mil for the next 3 years, that time might have passed. I think they went from a hot commodity people are gonna want to, I don't know if immovable
Yeah.
is the right word, but I think you might have to pay somebody to take it.
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting
Yeah.
anything back, which is rough. But
You think you might be right.
they
Yeah.
they just never pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Should have been done a while ago, but what can you do when you're the Ducks?
What
They're
can
they're
you
they're
do,
doing the same thing
Anaheim?
with Toronto.
Yeah, you got to move these guys out at some point.
But for the two things we do at the end for every team, yeah, we already kind of discussed it. Do we think the Ducks make the playoffs? No,
No.
no, that's easy. And then the other one, again, we pick one player who we think wins a individual award. Who do you got?
I think there is not a lot of great answers. You know, you don't want to go with the obvious one, really. So I'm not going to say Gudis for the Hart Trophy, but
Oh, I was thinking at Ross. Ooh,
oh,
cat
dude, he scored like two
awkward.
goals from the neutral zone last year. It was great.
That's he's the new PK Subban when it comes to doing that.
Yeah, and he scored the one on the Sharks where it hit a stick and just went flying up into the air and fell in the net
Oh
like 10
yeah,
seconds later.
that was
That
actually
was
a
what
sick goal.
that was one of the goofiest goals I think that happened last year. But I
Goofy Gudis.
I don't see any way that you can say anything other than Cutter Gauthier winning the
Calder.
Calder Trophy, Rookie of
Yeah,
the Year.
yeah. That's like the only one. Again, and sometimes you just have to go with the obvious one. Like
Yeah,
there's really not another option.
yeah.
So
And I do believe Cutter Gauthier has, I want to say last time I checked, the third best odds to win the Calder. So he's genuinely got a good shot at it.
yeah, I think there's definitely, like I said, we've talked about it with a couple teams and their young players. Like the rookie class we're gonna have this year is going to be so like just juiced up and low. Like it was already gonna be great, but then finding out that like Michkov's coming over and now you get to add him into that mix, it makes it that much
It's gonna be fun to
more
watch.
exciting. It's gonna be a race. It's gonna be a battle, and it's gonna be uh, awesome. But
Yeah. Before we move on from the Ducks, I just have one final thing that I want to propose to you. Uh, do you think they name a captain anytime soon? Doesn't have to be
actually,
this season.
I was gonna bring that up, yeah, during it, but I forgot. Um, I don't know. I think you're kind of at the point right now where I think if you give the captaincy out, I think the best choice and the one that makes the most sense is going with Cam Fowler.
Cam Fowler. Yeah.
Like the longest tenured guy, he's been there from kind of the old era with Perry and Getzlaff to now, you know, this young one kind of, the perfect example is Marc-Edouard Vlasic in San Jose. You know, he's a guy that
Yeah.
was with the old core and now he's with the young core. Obviously, Cam Fowler's still playing way better. Um, if they don't this season, I could potentially see a world where next offseason you see, Mason McTavish sign his new deal, and then he gets the
I
C
was
right there. You sign him to an 8-year deal, and it's like, all right, you're the captain now. You're
yeah. I
leading the
was
charge for the
I was
next
actually
8
kind of
years.
thinking like they could potentially sign him to an extension soon, right? He's only got the 1 year left, so they could
I
sign
guess
him
they
to
could.
his extension tomorrow if they really wanted to. There haven't at least been any rumors. Although I do think the Ducks run a pretty tight ship. They usually don't have much leaked before it happens.
Yeah,
So, especially, the Cutter Gauthier trade, absolutely out of nowhere. But
yeah.
yeah, if they were to re-sign him, extend him for 8 years and give him the C, I wouldn't hate it.
I
He
don't. I
seems
don't
like
hate it.
he seems almost like a John Tavares guy to me, where I think he wouldn't be the best guy on the team, but I think he'd probably still be the best leader out of all of them.
Yeah,
I think he's one of those guys that has a lot of really strong
but
leadership
none of that. He
qualities.
does have the potential to be the best as well.
I don't think so, and that's not a knock on him. That's because I think Leo Carlson is going to be he's going to be a Hart finalist in the future. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the league.
I guess overall, but I'm more so looking at just like generating the offense and being like, like if you were sitting there and you had to pick a guy in like overtime in the playoffs and you got one sub and you're either picking McTavish or Carlson to go on, I'm assuming McTavish, I think, is what it's going to end up being.
I would say in the future, Carlson. Right now, you'd have to pick McTavish because
I think
dude was
McTavish's offensive
insane in the
ceiling is
World
just
Juniors.
higher. But again, they're both young, so like we're just kind of
Interesting.
throwing shit out there and then
Yeah,
wait in 10 years and be like, okay, yeah, I was right on that. Like
yeah.
both are great players nonetheless.
You know what? We should do that at some point this off season. We should make an episode where
Fuck off.
we make some predictions
Fuck off.
5 years in the future, and let's see where they end up.
Dude, I'd be so fucking antsy for the next 5 years. I would just
I
be sweating every night thinking about
I
it.
believe we did something similar before the podcast even started. I want to say it was around 2 years ago. I think I put in my phone to remind me in 5 years, and we put in our top 10 lists for like centers or something like that. I'd have to dig around and find it, but I kind
Oh
of think we
shit.
did something similar. So
That somewhat kind of rings a bell.
maybe
But,
I'll take a look around and see if I can dig it up
but
later
yeah,
on. But
that's kind of where
that's
I'm
all I
at. I
got for the
think, yeah,
Ducks.
you go if you're gonna name one right now, maybe McTavish. I think if they name one out, probably Fowler. But I think at some point McTavish will be getting it. But
Yeah,
moving over out east, moving all the way from the west coast over to the east coast. On Long Island, we have the New York Islanders. Um, again, you can call them a boring team or whatnot, but they did finish last year with a record of 39, 27, 16. That was good for 94 points. The over-under on their point total was 92.5, so they just barely got to the over. And
with
again,
8-1-1 in their final 10 as well. So they made a
yeah.
push to beat that over under. So
Oh,
props to
and I
them
was
for
also
that.
going to say, not only that, 16 overtime shootout losses like that. That's 16 points right there in games that
Yeah,
you're losing. Goals for 246. That's good for 22nd in the league, and goals against 263. That's good for 19th. So they're not in the top 50% in either goals for against, but they were in the playoffs. And again,
yeah,
largely due to that 16 overtime shootout loss points that they were getting.
yeah. And I just searched it up. They have the sixth most overtime losses in a single season
As you say, they were getting up
in
there.
NHL history. Like the most is 4 different teams within the past 15-ish years that all finished with 18 overtime losses. The Flames 2 seasons ago had 17, and then 16 last year. The Islanders and a couple other teams are also tied there. Kind of
Yeah.
looks like where are they here? Yeah, the Montreal Canadiens also had 16 last year.
Yeah, and obviously Islanders are one of the teams that made a big coaching change mid-season. Lane Lambert, at the time of his firing, the team had a record of 19, 15, and 11. And under Patrick Waugh, the team had a record of 20 wins, 12 losses, and then 5 overtime shootout losses. So, I mean, Lane Lambert, like in total, you're 19 wins, 26 losses. You get some points out of him. Patrick Waugh, 20 wins, 17 losses, and then if you get a few extra points in the losses there. So the team improved under Patrick Waugh, and like you said, like they went on an incredible run down near the end of the season. Like it started off rough, and again, it was just the state the team was in. But once kind of Patrick Waugh got the team going and playing his way in his hockey, you started to see the team slowly improve over time. And then obviously the first round exit in the playoffs again this year to the Carolina Hurricanes going out in Game 5. It was kind of be expected. Carolina is one of the favorites in the East, and the Islanders, depending on how you like the point system you view it, probably didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. So they got one win in the playoffs at least, right?
Yeah, they got a win.
They got one.
I'm sure that one was fun.
I mean, to be fair, it was a home win and it was an overtime. And we initially thought it was scored by Robert Bortuzzo, which made it that much more fucking nuts at the time of it happening.
This, I'm not excited for the future of the Islanders, to be honest. They
no. Well, so we'll get into it a bit.
They got some good things to look forward to, but they got some holes that they need to fill, and
so and here's the thing:
expiring contracts coming up relatively
soon. We will get into that. Before that, I just had to pull it because I remember you did it. Cap space, they have less than $1 million. Like they have no cap space currently to work with right now, and they have all their draft picks from rounds 1 to 7. They have every single one of their picks. They have nobody else's, so they're clean slate on all that going into next season. In terms of off-season moves, really not a whole lot for them.
They might have made the least off-season moves out of anyone.
I don't think it's the least off-season moves. They just were one of the teams that made like no moves on opening day of free agency.
Fair.
So back in May,
the move they made was nice.
The move they did make was nice. But going to, it was back around the time of, it was like kind of beginning of May. And that's kind of the time when a lot of like, free agent guys from, undrafted guys from both kind of the KHL and the NCAA, like are free agents and can sign anywhere. And kind of the two big ones were Colin Graff and Maxime Tusil. I don't pronounce the last name. Tsyplakov. Suplikov? Something like that.
This Anyways, T has to be silent for that to make sense in my head.
Yeah. And Colin Graff, and the Islanders got Suplitsov or Suplakov. That's what I'm going to call him. I don't know.
You can just call him Maxim.
Yeah. They got him signed. I think he could be a very solid player for them. I just had him here. His KHL set, so he's 25. He will be 26 at the start of next season. But last year in the KHL, 65 games played for Moscow, 31 goals, 47 points. So, it's a low risk, high reward, bringing in a guy potentially to help bolster your,
middle
six. Scoring on the top 6 or middle 6 that you're not getting from Oliver Wahlstrom, even though they re-signed him. They also re-signed Simon Holmstrom to a 1-year deal. We still don't know the cap hit. It's still popping up that we don't know on here, at least for me.
Never mind, 850 for that player.
Yeah, never mind. I was looking in the wrong spot. Holmstrom, 850. So 1-year deal, solid, 4th line guy. Good on the penalty kill, and I think he led the league in shorthanded goals last year.
That's not nothing. One thing we know is that the Islanders are not done this offseason. because they are currently one of the few teams that is over the cap.
Yeah.
They're currently at negative
Oh,
950,000 in cap.
and we'll get into that because I think I know what's happening eventually with
Interesting.
them, or can assume.
Yeah.
And then day one of free agency, they re-signed Mike Riley. They grabbed him off waivers, and he came in and was like just instantly filled that hole that they had on their blue line. I thought he looked really good with them. So a cheap 1-year deal to bring him back, and as good as he was, you're instead of playing him with Robert Bortuzzo, you're getting Scott Mayfield back, which I think will be even better for him because Mayfield's obviously, in my opinion, the better defenseman than Bertuzzo at this point now. And the one free agency signing they made, Anthony Duclair, a 4-year deal at $2.5 million. This was like
3.5.
What did I say?
2.5.
Oh yeah, 3.5. Okay.
I'd be pissed if you got 2.5 there.
And this was a perfect signing.
Yeah.
All around. Like, this is one of the faster players in the league. It's a great guy to put him on the wing with Barzal, and you've got two really speedy wingers there, and Duclair loves to shoot the puck and score goals, and Barzal loves to always pass the puck first and give the other guy an opportunity to score. And not only that, Duclair's former coach when he was in the Q, when he played with Quebec, was Patrick Waugh. So he's also coming in here, is already going to know the system that's going to be going on, for the most part at least. He already knows the coach knows him. They've got a good relationship. Like, it's such a good position for both Duclair and the Islanders. Like, this is a great deal for both of them.
Yeah, I absolutely love it for them. And it does sound like Patty Waugh specifically went to the GM and said, hey, Duclair's available. Go get Anthony Duclair. Like, see if you can make it work. Because he was like, I've coached him before. He just had a great season. Like, he wanted him on the team and he got him. Like, if the coach sticks his neck out for you, like, that's got to make you feel pretty good going into that situation.
And not only that, again, Duclair's kind of a guy I've talked about before, kind of like when we talked about Max Domi, is like a guy is really good. Well, not really good, but like decently good. And like they're good. Right? I think we can say they're good at this.
They're very solid players, yeah.
But it's like they just never been able to actually settle down anywhere. They're constantly bouncing from team to team all around. But now, like, we finally got Max Domi signed a decent term deal to stick around in Toronto, and he's re-signing there to a deal like that. So he's probably going to be there for probably the majority, like that whole deal. And then Duclair, as long as Patrick Waugh is with the Islanders, Duclair's not getting traded. Like, if Waugh's going out and getting him, like that's one of his guys. So it's nice to see that Duclair can finally settle down and actually stick around somewhere, and it helps benefit the Islanders in areas that they needed to address. So,
yeah, Duclair is one of those Swiss Army knife players. Like, he can, in a pinch, play on either power play or penalty kill. He's a good responsible two-way player. He can pass, he can shoot, he can just be an energy guy. Like, he's not going to be the best on your team at a ton of things, but he can do whatever you ask of him, and that's really helpful, especially since he plays right or left wing. He plays on either side.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a super exciting offseason or anything like that for the Islanders, but again, with Lou Lamoriello, like that, that's not to be expected.
Yeah.
All right, he's going to quietly make his moves, but it's, in my opinion, it still improves the team. It's nothing super big and flashy and whatnot. But first of all, they didn't really have the cap space to work with, and it doesn't go with the mold of how they're progressing forward. I'm just checking beforehand if there's anything before we hop into the lineup. Oh, Rick DiPietro, still getting that paycheck. Well earned, buddy. Well earned.
Yeah, 5 years till he's a UFA. Somebody's going to sign him to a contract in 2030.
Might as well.
That would be hilarious.
We did talk a bit about or you mentioned how you're kind of worried about their future a little bit, which totally understandable. I think it. I think their window is still open for the next while. Like they're in that position now where they're in the midst of going all in, and that in 7 or 8 years, probably in that time, that's when they're going to kind of be like, now it's time to start selling everything possible and doing that rebuild.
That's crazy though. Like that seems crazy to me. Like they don't have a team to go all in on.
But that's
Like
the thing, right? They
got a
already
fine
went all
team,
in. The
but
problem is they just ran into the juggernaut of Tampa.
yeah.
Like it very well could have easily been, the Islanders were back-to-back cup champs, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it was all worth it. But now it's like they didn't get their cups, but like that was kind of their main window, right? It just kind of came out
Yeah.
of nowhere. Despite them just recently losing Tavares and whatnot, it actually made the team better. And so, but like it was like that was kind of their window to do it. But now they're trying to they're in that I hate bringing it up, but like it's true. They're in that kind of phase that the Sharks were in back in the kind of
Like
you know
2020, 2019.
no more. I would say more so the 20 kind of 14, 15. Like I still think their run in 2016 was just like that was just incredible and magical. But like they were trying to just prolong it when it was like like their window had already kind of closed their main window.
Right.
And they just got to the point where they were kind of just prolonging, trying to stay in it, even though, I
The
love
writing
cheering
was
for
on
them,
the
but
wall.
I was just like, this doesn't seem like I can't see this team going all the way. And then
Right. Kind
the
of, yeah, like
2016
the Red
was
Wings.
nuts. Like that was just the perfect path and a couple great free agent signings that worked out for, 2 years. But that's kind of where the Islanders are at right now. And, Matt Barzal, 27 years old, Bo Horvat, 29. Suplakov or Maxim, if he pans out, like he's only 25. Duclair, 28. So
They've got some decent pieces signed for long term. I don't know about the contracts they're on, but most of them are fine at the least.
yeah, I don't see anything that I mean, the Anders Lee one, sure, but I don't see anything that I would say is an extreme overpay. And then on defense, you've got Ryan Pulock. He's 29 right now. Adam Pelech, he's 30. And Noah Dobson, 24. Same with Alexander Romanov. So, and then Sorokin, 29. So you're kind of in that, 30 to 25 range. Dobson kind of being the exception at 24, but whatever.
And
So,
they need to lock him up. He's available for an extension right
yeah.
now, and they should do that as soon as possible because he only looks like he's going to get better, and he's going to be more expensive when it happens.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm like, I wouldn't say their window's fully closed. I think they can, potentially go on that kind of miracle run if everything aligns. And again, if you've got Sorokin playing at his best and you're in the playoffs, he can get you far. If the team can even score, average 2.25 goals for per game in the playoffs. Okay, maybe that's a bit low. But like you're in that kind of 2 to 3 range. Sorokin is a goalie that can carry you for the most part through there. So a lot of things would need to align, but they're trying to keep it open. You know what? I respect it. With the pieces you got and your brand new arena and whatnot, you don't want to immediately just, shift into a rebuild and
I don't think
have
they need
that
a
brand new
rebuild.
arena.
I think with enough, they
Not
have
right
enough,
now, but
but they have
again in
enough
that
long-term
8 to 9 year
contracts.
range.
They have enough contracts. Barzell 7 years, Horvat 7 years, Engvall at 6. I don't know how much he really fits into a core, but Pollock for 6 years, Pellick for 5, Mayfield for 6, and then Sorokin for 8. Uh, that's a good core to build around. I think they should look into shipping out. 1 year left on Brock Nelson, 1 year on Kyle Palmieri. You know,
I
move
think
out
I think
move out
Nelson
some of those
sticks around for a bit
peripheral
longer.
pieces and try and try and recoup some assets, some younger guys, and
Yeah.
rebuild it from there. Like I think Brock Nelson's only 32. Like I think he could be good for them for a couple more years, but I think you'll get more for him if you trade him off at 50% retained. $3 million for Brock Nelson's pretty solid.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It does kind of depend on where they're going. The biggest thing also when I look at the Islanders and their future is like, looking back at the draft, they got Cole Eiserman, who is the best pure goal scorer in the draft.
Yeah, he
Right?
might
Like
be really
his
good for him.
shooting was so far above everybody, and he was they got him at 20. And if he can pan out in it, like again, there's worries about his game and transiting to the NHL and his, defensive game, whatnot. Sure. First of all, with the Islanders, like you're learning to play defense. Like you're not playing if you don't know how to play defense. Look at Oliver Wahlstrom, who maybe gets moved. But like if you're adding Cole Eiserman, and if he pans out, like he's got the potential to be a 50 goal per season guy if it all works out.
Especially if he's playing
And
on
so
the
if you're
wing to a
adding
guy
that
like
from like,
Barzell.
yeah, like you
Like
put him
that.
with Bo
Oh.
Horvat, where Bo can kind of offset maybe the areas that, Eiserman's weak in defensively. And then you've got Barzell, he's always looking to dish the puck first. And if you've got a guy who's just like, fuck, you pass me the puck, I'll score. Like that could be a good fit. But again, lots of areas of concern, but that's to be determined.
Yeah. It's a very tough team to tell what's going to happen with, because like they could miss the playoffs by 15 to 20 points, or they could clinch a playoff spot with 74 games played in the season. Like you tell me either of those and I'd believe you. Like it's a
Yeah.
hard team to gauge. Their guys can go off or they could really just not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it does depend on the goaltending, because Sorokin has shown more than a few flashes of absolute brilliance, but last year he was not very good, and he lost the net in the playoffs to Semyon Varlamov, who is a very good goaltender as well. But he's at 36 years old.
Yeah.
You don't want him taking the net from a goalie you have signed to $8.25 million for 8 more years.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I think Sorokin bounces back. I don't think he's done by a long shot, but it's an area of concern. I think it's fair to say.
It could be. I think it's going to be fine next year. I think last year was kind of a bit of a weird year and a lot of injuries, so I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah.
But moving to the forward lines, again, first forward line, this makes the most sense to roll with. Anthony Duclair and Matthew Barzal on the wing, Bo Horvat in the middle. I like that first line. I think that's awesome. Like you've got Horvat, who I think is really hitting his peak. And, from last year, I think, from how many guys are kind of rotating in and out on that top line, I think a guy like Duclair could help elevate Horvat's game offensively, and he's one of the better kind of two-way centers in the league. And then you've got Barzal and Duclair. Like you've got two of the I would say probably two in the top 8 fastest players in the league. I think the two of them are probably in the top 8.
In Duclair and Horvat? Or
No,
Barzal?
Barzal. Yeah,
Duclair
and Barzal.
Yeah, I thought you said Horvat, and I was kind of thinking, like, is he fast?
No. Yeah, Duclair.
Barzal's in there for sure. Duclair's, he's at
I
least
think Duclair.
knocking on eight.
I think he's right in there. So and you've got the two of them on the wing together, and again, you've got the guy who loves to always pass the puck, and you got the guy who likes to score goals. That could be a fun combo to have together, especially with Barzal's a righty, Duclair's a lefty. They can play on natural sides. That could be a lot of fun to watch, especially in 3-on-3. Fuck, could you imagine?
Yeah.
You just send Dobson out there to just stretch long passes to Barzal and Duclair fucking flying up. Dude, that could be fun.
Yeah, that could genuinely be a good plan. Like, they don't even have to catch the pass. He can just throw it down off the backboards, and if they beat the defenseman to it, it's not icing. Like,
yeah. And that's something Patrick Waugh would draw too.
You could ice the puck and get a 2-on-0. Like, that could be such a goofy but legitimately good play.
Like, Patrick Waugh would do something like that. That would be his plan going into overtime.
He's crazy. He'll do it.
Second line, I think this could be a very interesting second line. Maxime Suplatkov with Brock Nelson centering, and then Kyle Palmieri on the other wing. I mean, Palmieri and Nelson, both goal scorers. I think Kyle Palmieri actually fucking dropped 30 last year. Did he not?
Kyle Palmieri, eh?
I think Kyle Palmieri dropped 30 tucks last year. He did. He dropped 30. Brock Nelson had 34, and Bo Horvat had 33. So, like, if you've got Brock Nelson, Palmieri in your second line, they both put up over 30 goals last year. Why not put the new kid, give him a chance with those two, and again, maybe help elevate them even further? Because I think, if his KHL game and what he's done can kind of translate to the NHL, it'll be more of an upgrade to be playing with Nelson and Palmieri, right? I would assume so, at least.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like that has to be an upgrade. Guys putting up 69 nice and 54 points.
Yeah.
Last season in the NHL, like that's got to be an upgrade. So, both guys also played all 82 games. Yeah. Which matters, right? You literally got to play to be good. So.
Yeah. And it's always tough to tell with guys. Like, we've seen some guys come over from the KHL, not talking about guys, like Kaprizov and Kaprizov was drafted, but like those guys that are going to be like elite, like it's those guys that you're unsure of, like you don't know because they weren't drafted. They're coming over and they're like 25, 26. So he could be a great fit, and it could completely translate, and he could instantly be a top 6 guy for them, or it might not work out. It's a kind of a one and done, and then if we're talking about him next year, he's back in the KHL. So I think you got to try and put him in a position to succeed, and you can't go wrong. Again, two guys that put up over 30 goals and can play all 82 games. Give the kid a chance and see if it works out.
It could be good for him, but it does push push Anders Lee down to the third line.
Oh, Lee's a third liner now.
Is he?
I don't think it's gonna happen, but I also genuinely wouldn't be surprised if he gets stripped of the C at some point, like Tavares just did. Well, you just got to look at his contract, right? Like it's not as bad now. Like it's not as many years left, but he's kind of continuing to go further and further down because he's not super fast.
Right.
And in this day and age, like you can't really be a top 6 winger and not have good, at least decent foot speed. Like Lee is below average. Like he's still a great net front presence and whatnot, and crashing and bashing, and the leadership's obviously still there. But just in terms of foot speed, you're not doing him or your team any favors by having him play in the top 6. He's a third liner now, and I would say a very solid third liner, a third line checker, like checking forward.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think that's grounds to lose the captaincy.
I'm more so thinking if they're trying to start going with the new regime, like they're going with now a Bo Horvat or something. And it's like, they're kind of, as they're starting to move out from eventually, I don't know if it's like this year, next year, but is it as they start to move on from, the Lees, the Nelsons, the Pageaus, and start going with this other kind of new core that they're starting to bring up. That's the only way I see it. Again, I don't think it will, but if it did, I think it goes off Lee and just it goes to Horvat probably. But the third line, Anders Lee and Pierre Engvall, centered by Jean-Gabriel Pageau. I like that third line. It's more of a defensive third line. It's actually a pretty decent defensive third line that I think can still, you could be looking at them all as a maybe 35, 40 point guys. Maybe Pageau a little bit higher, but I think if you get a good two-way game and you're getting 35 to 40 points out of him, I think that's you're overpaying like fucking hell for that line, because what is that? 5? That's like is that $18 million third line?
Yeah, it's pretty.
Lee's making 7, Pageau 5, so that's 13. Engvall 3. Dude, that's an $18 million third line. Or no,
that's 50.
My math. Yeah, my math's not right.
Engvall and Lee makes 10, and then
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, still 15. Fuck.
Yeah.
That's
And
that's not ideal when you
I
break it
think you
down
were
that
pretty
way,
generous
but
with your point numbers too, because Lee is only trending downwards, and he was at 37 points last year. Pajot had 33 last year, and Engvall had 28. So,
how many games did they all play? I think
uh,
Inkball played the majority. I think Pajot and Lee missed some time.
no, the exact opposite. Pajot played all 82, Lee played
Oh shit.
81, and Engvall played 74. So he missed a
Oh
couple.
shit. Okay, so actually, yeah, maybe the
So
point. Yeah, maybe
Engvall
the point
plays
was a
all
bit.
of them. Say he hits, around 30 points, maybe a couple more. But
Yeah, I'd
they were
also
all
going
they were
a
all
bit more on
hovering
the
around
upside.
30 or a bit higher. So 30 points for each of your third line guys is still
Yeah,
nothing to sneeze at. So
just someone is $15 million third line. And then the fourth line, very different from what we're used to. We're not talking about, the identity line anymore. Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck are out. Kyle McLean and Simon Holmstrom on the wing, centered by Casey Cizikas now. That's a really good, actually, defensive, solid fourth line, and all guys that are like they're right up there when it's the penalty kill time. Like they're right up there. They're logging lots of time on the penalty kill. They're good in their own end. They score some shorties. And Cizikas is again great leader. One of the best fourth line centers I think in the league if that's where he ends up. So and it's a cheap fourth line relatively
yeah,
minus
honestly,
Cizikas.
yeah, like I think you're absolutely right about him being one of the better fourth liners in the league because like last season, 70 games played, 10 goals, 23 points, 53.4% in the faceoff dot. Like Zica's had pretty solid numbers last year. So having a guy like that
Yeah.
on your fourth line, unless he takes a big step back, which how old is he? 32 years old. I don't think he's going to take that much of a step back.
Mhm.
That's not terrible.
Yeah.
So
And then obviously the one name not mentioned, Oliver Wallstrom. Again, I think if Maxim fits in and that top six and can be effective, I think Oliver Wallstrom's kind of the odd guy out. I think he gets moved at some point. Like they keep trying it with him and it's just not working. Eventually you just gotta be like, it's just not working. Give him a chance to get consistent playing time somewhere else and make something work. But I just don't see room for him if he's not
yeah,
in the top six because like he's just
yeah,
yeah.
I think he's one of those
It's
guys
kind of where
that
I'm at with him.
you kind of want to trade him because he kind of has the upside there, but he's not going to make your top six. I don't know
Yeah,
what team he'd go to. I don't know who would want to take a swing on him, but you know, trade him for a fourth, a third. Somebody would
yeah.
take him.
Somebody would 100%. If you put him out there again, he signed a 1 year deal, $1 million. So a team, I like a team would take a risk on that for sure.
Yeah, especially
Uh,
since he's an RFA after that year. So
yeah, I guess still is an RFA. But moving on to the defense, top defensive pair. I think this is basically all the same as last year for the most part.
yeah,
Uh, Alexander Romanov, Noah Dobson. Again, we kind of talked about
solid,
Dobson and how his offensive game, I think, is only going to go to the next level.
bona fide number one center on a team.
Defenseman.
Uh, yeah, defenseman.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, Romanov just the complementary piece, the more defensive guy. Uh, Blocks shots, throws the body around, can lay some big hits. Like
Pretty
that.
much does all the things
Solid.
Dobson doesn't do,
Yeah.
which helps because if Romanov's worried about all that, Dobson can go be him and really chip in offensively as a defenseman. So I really like that, especially if Romanov can elevate his game just a bit more. You know, he doesn't need to
Hmm.
be near as good as Dobson, but he just needs to fill in the cracks. So I like
Exactly.
it.
Second defensive pairing. I mean, same pairing that's been together for the last while. Adam Pelech and Ryan Pollock. That's a great second pair.
Yeah,
Like when those guys are healthy and actually on their game, like they work so well together. So I've got no complaints having those two together. Did maybe kind of have a bit of a rough year last year, but I think coming in having it's now fully Bois team. They're fully with the system and everything. Like we've seen how good the team was playing down the stretch of the season. Once they got it going, and I only expect it to be a bit better.
Yeah.
So
Did they both get injured?
I think they were both injured at some point at different points throughout the season. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but
I was wondering if like somebody like put out a hit on them at the same time. I'm looking at their stats. They both played 58 games. That's quite a few games missed for them to both have the same amount of games played.
yeah. Um. Anyways, the last pair. Obviously, it talked about Mike Riley and how good of a fit he was, and how he's very deserving of a new contract from the Islanders. And then Scott Mayfield coming back. He got injured, I think, like halfway through the season.
Literally
Missed
halfway
the rest
through.
of the season. Oh,
41
really?
games played.
Oh, yeah. So
You're
after
right
the
on it.
season, got injured. Bit of a rough year, but again, apparently he was dealing with whatever the injury was kind of before the season, and then eventually got to the point where it was just so bad. It was like, just shut him down for the season. He can be fully healthy and ready to go next year. So I think that's going to be a very good, third pair. I don't have any complaints with that one. And then obviously we kind of talked about the goaltenders, Sorokin and Varlamov. I think in my opinion, like if both guys are on their game, like if Sorokin's back to what he was 2 years ago and Varlamov's still Varlamov, that's the best 1-2 punch in terms of your goalies 1 and 2.
Yeah, it might
I
be.
don't think there's
Like,
a team that you're looking at both guys and it's like, okay, that team starter is better and that team's backup is better. Like
yeah, I don't.
the only team you can make the argument was back when Boston had Swayman and Allmark, but that's
I think there's some arguments you could make. I think Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick has the potential to be. Jonathan Quick played a few games last year and looked pretty good in them, but it's hard to tell
I think at this
if
point, I
he's
think
going to replicate that.
I would still take Varley. I think that one's it may be even. I wouldn't say Rangers better. I'd say if
Yeah,
anything, even maybe.
I'd say there's a conversation there at the bare
Yeah,
minimum, but yeah, there's not a lot of teams that have that level of top end talent in net and have the depth to back it up as well. Like a lot
yeah,
of those teams that have that bona fide number one goalie, that Andre Vasilevsky, a lot of those teams are running with that Jonas Johansson in the net.
yeah.
So good for them for having two legitimate NHL caliber goaltenders.
Yeah. So we're at that point, wrapping it up. Do the Islanders make the playoffs? What are you thinking?
Oof. That's a tough one. I'm gonna say no. I
You're
don't
gonna say
think they
no?
do it. I'm gonna say no. I don't think they do it. I
Well,
think
if anyone knows
East
me,
is brutal.
if anyone knows me, they know I fuck with the Islanders. I think the Islanders make the playoffs.
Fair enough.
Don't
I
ask me
respect it.
why I believe that, but that's what I'm going with. It's a
I'm
homer
I'm
pick. It's
I'm
honestly it's
rather on
straight
the
up a homer
fence.
pick, but
I'm rather on the fence about them, and I think the tie-breaking thing is kind of that big 16 in the overtime losses last year. That's a lot of extra points that they got losing games.
yeah.
And you could also make the argument that, they're not going to lose that many games in overtime again next year and they'll win them instead. But
Mm-hmm.
the Devils are not missing the playoffs again, I don't think. I just
No,
can't see it happening.
there's no
The
way.
Sabres, the Red Wings, the Sens, they want in. Somebody's
Yeah,
got
just
to come
because
out.
they won and doesn't fucking mean they're getting in. Like Caps, I think are for sure falling out.
I think
But
Caps, I think Islanders. Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
think,
don't. No, I'm rocking with the Isles.
yeah.
Buffalo's
Yeah,
missing
I
again.
respect it.
Buffalo and Ottawa are missing.
Uh, I think you get Rangers, Hurricanes, and Devils in the Metro. Florida, Boston, Tampa at the Atlantic, and then the wild cards. Detroit, Toronto,
You can't say, yeah, come on. I think
Buffalo,
Toronto finishes above Tampa still.
Ottawa.
I was gonna rile you up at this point. Um,
You can't rile me up. I see a big 4-loss streak to end the season for Toronto.
true. And last one, individual player award.
Individual player award.
I
They,
think looking at, I think there's only 3 options. I think
I'd
there's
love to know
3 when
your
you look at this
third. I
team.
think I know what it is, but there's two blatant obvious ones. Do you want to go first and I'll pick
Dobson
the other one?
is okay. Well, I'm going with Sorokin wins the Vezina.
Okay. I think that is the best and most likely one. I think that's the number one thing for him. Um, but I don't feel bad at all about saying Noah Dobson for Norris.
No doubts for us. And then the third one I was thinking potentially you can make an argument for is Bo Horvat for
For Selke.
Selke. I think that one's the biggest
I
long
was
shot of the 3.
yeah,
But like if you had to pick 3, it's like those are the
that
only 3 you can make an
yeah.
argument for. Those are them.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've said it for a couple teams, but again, the Jack Adams, I wouldn't be super shocked if Patty Waugh won that, or
Yeah.
what, honestly, I could definitely see an Anders Lee winning the Mark Messier Award.
Sakes.
I could see it happening. I'm not saying that the trophy means anything,
Yeah. Oh, it means piss all. It means absolutely nothing.
especially to an
Um.
Islanders fan. I would imagine they wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
Islanders wouldn't care too much.
Wouldn't give a shit about it.
Yeah, I I bet Sorokin. You know what? Let's see. Vesna let's put it in right now. Vesna betting odds. Let's see it. Is he in there? One,
There's
two,
got to be.
three, four, five, six. So he's sixth on the list, but he's tied with 3 guys at plus 1,200. So,
Okay.
essentially tied. He's tied for 5th for
Yeah.
best odds. He's tied with Vasilevsky and Jake Markstrom. It's not bad.
Okay. Yeah. No, not at all. So he's right
Doing
up there.
Hellebuck dirty, man. Come on. Plus 900, 4th best odds. Come on. He just won it.
Yeah.
What does Hellebuck have to do to make anyone give a shit? The poor man just gets
Can't do
fucking
much.
shelled in Winnipeg.
Yeah. But
Also lives in Winnipeg.
Hey, yeah, you're not wrong. But that wraps up everything we have for the Anaheim Ducks and the New York Islanders. One last thing before we get out of here. It is your favorite time where you get to find out who we are covering in the next episode.
I can't believe I'm unprepared for it every single episode. Like, we do it every time, and I'm just always like, oh, we have more? Oh, right, we pick.
Yep, it's that
I'm never
time.
ready. I will allow you to pick first. Because
Allow me to pick first.
Because I'm just that nice of a guy.
No, you act like I know what team I want to do already.
He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it.
I'm just looking through to see what teams we've done. Okay, so we've done 10 teams so far.
Oh, these were 9 and 10.
Yeah. Fuck, dude. You sprung this on me and I wasn't ready.
That's what I was just saying. I can do it if you want. I can make my pick.
Well, I already know my pick. I've already made it.
Well, then do it.
Is the team you're gonna pick? Is it in the East?
I'll let you know when I decide one.
I'm gonna snipe your team right now.
Probably.
I am staying in the Metropolitan Division. Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh, he's crazy.
Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's a lot to talk about with that team. That'll be a fun team to do.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about Sidney Crosby's team. It's always fun to talk about it because you know that they are always in. They're always in. They're never gonna be rebuilding until Crosby's done because you've got Sidney Crosby on your team. Like, you have to.
Yeah, you're not doing a rebuild in the final years of his career.
Yeah.
You're not Ryan Getzlaffing him.
Yeah, you're not gonna Ovechkin him.
Yeah.
Just surround him with guys. Be like, you know what? Maybe Crosby could put in 400 goals this season, and then he'll be all-time goal scorer. That'd be so
possible.
Good. Be so good. He just scores at 4 goal a game pace. It's insane. He's absolutely nuts.
All right, who are you picking?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember all the teams we've done. I don't believe we've done this team yet. So I'm going to go out there and say we are going to talk about the Ottawa Senators.
Ottawa Senators. Yeah, we haven't done them. Yeah, Ottawa. Boom. There you go. Next episode, it will be the Ottawa Senators and the Pittsburgh Penguins. A little rematch of the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals, where it was
Oh, classic.
the defending Stanley Cup champion
Oh,
Pittsburgh Penguins versus Erik Karlsson on one leg. That was the entirety of that series, and we will revisit these two teams earlier on next week.
yeah.
And we break them down.
And now Erik Karlsson's on the other side of it.
Yeah, he's now got two legs, and he's on Pittsburgh. That does wrap up everything we have for this episode today. Once again, thank you to everybody for tuning in and supporting us through this off season. As we've kind of fallen off the rails a little bit with consistency on trying to maintain our schedule, but at the same time, it is the off season, so
Main thing is trying to get 2 episodes a week.
Yeah,
out.
and that's what we've been staying good with. We've been staying true with that, at least. Little hiccups here and there, but staying true with it.
To be fair, that storm, there was not much we could do about that.
Yeah,
there's nothing I could do.
Record. Yeah, there's nothing I could do.
Like that's a pretty good excuse.
I could have been swimming. I would have had to get a pool floaty, but it was also like freezing rain. Like it was like ice cold.
Oh, let's record in a pool.
Rough. All right, let's do it.
Let's have a beach day.
You heard it here first. Next episode, next week will be our beach episode. I don't know how we're gonna do that, but we'll figure that out. If you guys want to join in talking hockey with us, or letting us know what team you want to see next, you can do us on any of our socials: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, SCU Hockey. Come talk hockey. Tell us what team you want us to cover next. And if we already did your team and we missed something, let us know and we'll revisit it. I don't know, at some point. Eventually.
Yeah, probably. Like at the very least, we'll make fun of your comment or something. Like
oh yeah.
We'll do something with it.
Yeah. Or if you guys have any hot takes, let us know that, and we'll chat with you guys about your hot takes as well.
Yeah, we're working on a couple hot takes that we genuinely believe in for a future hot take episode that is just going to be all-time hot takes. We already did an episode on hot takes and long shot predictions for next season, but at some point we're going to be doing one where it's just hot takes throughout hockey.
So, yeah, we haven't quite figured out necessarily how we're going to do it and what platform it's going to be on, but we will keep you guys updated with how we decide to do that.
Yeah.
But that does wrap up everything we have for this episode today. Big dog, big shoot, big cheese, big dick. You got anything you want to throw out before we get out of here?
Oh, Shane Pinto. It's got pretty good odds for the Selke next year. Don't know why, but he does. And he's hammering him.
He's fucking hammering it. Yeah.
Dude.
He's going out there blocking anything and everything.
Can you imagine him winning the Selke? Like, the memes would be so funny because everyone's like, he put a bet on himself to win it.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. He'll never beat those allegations. I don't know. I tried to come up with something clever to say, but couldn't think of anything. It is late. This episode is like out in 7 hours time from when we're recording.
We are well past midnight, but let's wrap this up before we go even more off the rails. We're losing it. We're crumbling under the pressure.
Yeah, that does wrap up everything we got for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.